Hi everyone. Welcome to the first lecture of KoreaGSD this semester. And good evening and good morning, depending on where you are right now. And we are super thrilled to have Eunseon and Wonyoung for our first lecture. My name is Jiwon, a current co-president of the KoreaGSD this year. And I will start with a very brief introduction about the KoreaGSD. KoreaGSD is a student group at the Harvard GSD, serving as a platform to bring the perspective of people who identify themselves as members of the Korean community and further knowledge production and advocacy at the GSD and beyond. Before introducing our invited speakers, a quick reminder about today's timeline and the features you see in the Zoom meeting. We will listen to the presentation of two invited speakers for about 15 to 20 minutes each, and we'll have time for questions and discussions during the last 15 to 20 minutes. Please feel free to leave your questions in the chat box throughout the lecture. But I would really encourage all of you to unmute yourself and ask your questions during our discussion time. Now I'm really delighted to introduce our invited speakers, Eunseon and Wonyoung, to listen and discuss one of the most pressing issues in Seoul. Eunseon Park is the director of Listen to the City, an art, urbanism, research activism collective. Listen to the City started in 2009 and has advocated voices of the marginalized through a variety of activities. The collective defines problems such as gentrification and the 4 major rivers restoration projects in the Korea as the destruction. Oh, yeah.
죄송해요. 제가 잘못 눌렀어요.
Let me continue then. Wonyoung So is an urban data visualization designer and researcher at MIT. He studies how urban data and technology have been historically used to orchestrate, predict, and police public life, and how the future of urban science can be different if we care more about empowering marginalized groups in the city. So with that, we'll start with Eunseon's presentation, in which she will introduce the context and issues of Cheongyechoen Euljiro in Seoul and the initiation of the Mapping the Industry and Trade Ecosystem projects. So Eunseon, over to you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I will start with my presentation. Thank you for coming. My name is Eunseon, and today I'm going to show you about what we're doing at Cheongyecheon. And today I'm going to present about the background of our project called industrial mapping. So, and then Wonyoung will give you more details about the website. So, as Jiwon introduced me, we consist of urban researchers, designers, filmmakers, and activists. Our membership is flexible and open. Our works have diverse forms of tactics that could be changed according to the theme. We research, make books, and make films on applications. I keep hearing the bell sound. Can I stop listening to that?
Yeah, maybe Jiwon, if you, I think it's because you're a host, Eunseon.
I don't know how I can do that actually.
Then I will just, that's okay. I will just keep listening. Okay, so we work with many artist institutions. However, we are more interested in how Listen to the City can listen to the marginalized people and beings neglected by society. Therefore, most of our projects are independent, meaning we are poor. To listening from marginalized people, we need feminist epistemology and feminist standpoint. Against mainstream authoritarian neoliberal planning, we need to feminist insurgent planning. So this is map that we made in 2015. No, in 2017. There are so many redevelopment projects just in Seoul. So that's one of the reasons that we're doing this, because there are so many redevelopment is happening at the moment, and it's going on, and there are so many destructions happening in Seoul. So redevelopment, I will give you just brief introduction about South Korean redevelopment. South Korean redevelopment is quite unique. I've never seen like this in any other countries, maybe China. So they just blow out huge blocks and they just build new buildings. We call it apart. So redevelopment in South Korea has two major issues. First, the redevelopment worsen aggravated inequality. Second, destroy the diversity of urban culture and history. The redevelopment in South Korea demolished old houses and provided new residential buildings called apart. Ironically, when the number of houses increased, the owner of the house actually decreased. According to the Korean government statistics, there are 3,100,000 houses. The housing supply rate was over 93%. The percentage of house owner was 44%. Meanwhile, 2016, there were 3,633,000 houses, and housing supply rate increased to up to 96%. But percentage of house owner decreased to 42%. Eventually, actually, 2.5 homeowners rate decreased. So meaning redevelopment project actually have worsened the inequality. So it's showing that, obviously showing that, you know, providing more homes doesn't mean that you make more homeowners. So, but no one really talk about this in South Korea. They already say that we need to provide more houses. But the point is, how can we increase the owner of a house? And the more of a less than 10% of residents, only 10% and less than that resettled after the redevelopment in Seoul. In South Korea, redevelopment is a public project in the law. However, there is a lack of public benefits. The ruthless redevelopment has destroyed the urban and local history and everyday people's spaces, such as alleys, vernacular houses, or like matchip, like local restaurants. And this is one of the typical Korean scenes from, like, you know, like Jamsil. So as you see, there are so many recorded apartments. So the scenery is homogeneous. There is no diversity in architecture. So it consequences in, you know, like forcible evictions are very, very violent in South Korea. So they use gangsters to evict people. I had to fight with many gangsters in myself. That is terrible, and I don't want to do it again, but you have to face it all the time. This is really stressful. And in Eunseon, for Daniel Levitskin's archipelago project, 6 people killed during the forcible eviction. That's in Eunseon massacre. So actually, Daniel Levitskin is just a designer, and then the urban planners, no one really went to jail. So they should really have a responsibility about the project, and the urban planners should more think about evictees and marginalized people for sure. They all know, and then urban planners all know, learn about that, but in practice, they don't really do that. That's the problem, I think. So this map I made for an exhibition, and actually this is a brief map that evicted the map of evicted street vendors from 2003 Cheongyecheon redevelopment project and 2007 Dongdaemun Design Park project. So this stadium demolished, and this one was a elevated highway before, and they destructed for restoration of a river. And there are so many street vendors, they're all evicted. So actually everyone would know about Cheongyecheon restoration project. Actually, the designer graduated from Harvard University, and then he jailed for bribery. And yeah, sad to say that. So actually, Cheongyecheon project started for historical restoration, ecological restoration, and economic renaissance. But it turned out a destroy of urban history and culture, lost the identity of city and collective memories, and then destruction of the light to the city. So actually, it mentioned as like sustainable urban project, and 90% of papers praise this project as successful case. But if you know the history, you cannot really say that. So it seems nice, they are stream and people share, enjoying the watershed. But actually, this is not real river. This is a tap water. This is like huge fish tank. This is an original river basin, and they put some rubber coat on it, and then they put concrete, and then they put some pebbles and stones, and then they put tap water. So actually, this is not ecological restoration. And they found, when they unearthed, they found large scale of remains about the bridge stones and embankment, but they threw it away, not rather restored properly, because they didn't have money and didn't have enough time, because Lee Myung-bak wanted to be a president at the time, so he had to finish in 2 years. So they just quickly finished it. So there was no alternative space for those street vendors. So there are so many street vendors there, and it was a culture there. You cannot simply say this is illegal, this is illegal. Every market started from this kind of street market. So in South Korea, especially, they criticize street vendors as illegal beings. But this is really, I think, problematic in the city. And they struggle really hard, and they forcefully evicted really brutally. And I'm going to talk about the second generation of Cheongyecheon gentrification, which started from 2018. So it started from here. The Cheongyecheon gentrification is now the rent price gone up like real crazy. It's really expensive now. And this area, the green zone, was the kind of the last bit of old part of Seoul. Actually, these slopes everywhere is developed already. So this Seoul area was the only one left over the old tissue of Seoul. So it contains so many historical architectures, the buildings from 1920s, the colonial time, and small workshops from 70s. So Cheongyecheon Euljiro Anti-Gentrification Alliance, we started in 2018. I made that with many researchers and artists. So we usually cover this green zone. So we care about more than 1,000 merchants and the mechanics. That's really a hard job. So crisis of Cheongyecheon, actually, I think this is there's a questions, but I will answer later. Crisis of Cheongyechoen Euljiro, I think that is a limitation of modern planning. So one of the vice mayors said the roofs are too old. There was the mention about the Cheongyechoen Euljiro area. That's so stupid because we are not bird, but he is seeing the city as, from the sky. So, but we walk around the city and the people walking in the street. So we need a transition from perspective. We need a transition of perspective from the eye bird view to people's eye level. So that's why we need feminist urban planning. Feminist urban planning meaning not feminine planning, but this is about feminist standpoint. And he is one of our favorite mechanic. He is a great person, and he had an interview with, this is the Guardians from UK. So they are going to build another apartment. So it's really stupid, but they don't really care about it. That the private developers actually can do everything if they want to in South Korea. So they are building residential building here. It doesn't make any sense because this is a city center and full of mechanics. So they need they are losing like productional function of a city. So already in Seoul area, and about 10,000 skilled technicians and merchants are working there, and then they are all going to be evicted. About 1,000 workers already displaced or lost their job since 2018 without alternative working space. Consequently, Seoul City is losing its productional function. So we did rallies and a lot of events and cultural events, researches, and so on. So this is one of the our favorite space called Shina Foundry Shop, and then it was one of the oldest foundry shop in South Korea, and then they left Cheongyecheon because of the redevelopment. And then we started Cheongyecheon Euljiro Anti-Gentrification Alliance to stop this kind of destruction. So we started this research on the industrial ecosystem, but this research was not just everything. We researched about people's unofficial history, the life of female workers in Cheongyecheon, helping workers legally, fighting against the city government, and we also negotiating with them. We tried really hard to gain alternative working space and organizing cultural events. Actually, Korean government and city government and good level government, they don't do anything if we don't ask for it. So destruction of Cheongyecheon and Euljiro was not just about losing space or losing place to work. It was destruction of social capital, like network, trust, reciprocity, and participation in social norm. To figure out characters of space and people, we started research on the industrial network, informal networks. So this is one of the informal networks. They are really close together. It's closer than any family ties. So they did regular festivals, informal festival in autumn and springtime. It's finished. So this one is already left. This building is a kind of really historical, important building, and it's going to be demolished next year. So we're trying really hard to protect this alley and the building. So this is a research flow. So gentrification, and we thought about its consequences in destruction of urban industry and destruction of social capital, destruction of urban culture and history, lost public concern, and deprivation of rights in the city. So we decided to signify and visualization of value, which is really important. So actually, in South Korean, we call it make a language. So we studied on industry and trade ecosystem of Cheongyecheon Euljiro and social capital, urban culture and history, and supporting residents' rights. And we decided to make a website, and we collaborated with Popcoin. I will talk about it later. So we visited over 320 shops by foot. So we met many merchants, and not everyone is friendly. So it was very tough to survey on their, budget, their income and where they live actually, and the, size of their workload. And we asked over 30 questions. And one of the main purpose of this survey was looking for their clients actually. So they have so many clients, so they cannot really give all the list to us, but they gave us like 5 representative shops or clients to us. So I coded them and visualized with Gephi. So this is not Gephi, but anyway, the average year was 34.5 years of, so the workers here, they work over 35 years. So they're so skilled. Somehow they meaning that they're old, but there are so many younger mechanical the workers there too. So you cannot simply say that they're old. And turned out, Seoul city government and developers insist that Cheongyecheon is old and they don't make anything, they're just making rubbish. But actually, it was not. The main customers, actually university. University is one of the most influential customers, especially the engineering labs. Because in South Korea, we don't have, in engineering schools, we don't have technicians at university because we have Cheongyecheon. If you wanted to make any like machines, you go to Cheongyecheon because in the city center, you can make it very easily and cheap. And the hospitals, usually hospitals need 1 or 2 machines, not 1,000 or 1,000,000. So Cheongyecheon is designed to make 1 or 2 machines. It's a perfect place to make 1 or 2 machines actually. And then because you can make one and then you have to fix it again, improve again. But like big factories in outside of Seoul, they don't do it for you. And then it's really expensive if you wanted to produce like 1,000 or 1,000,000. But here you can make just 100 pieces or less than 10 pieces. So this is really convenient for students and private developers. And so Eunseon Hospital and Seoul National University Hospital, they are all customer of Cheongyecheon area. And the artist is also very important customers and students and individual developers. Yeah, so they make Kuwait tailor and medical surgery machines, 3D contour cameras. In leisure, we found the characters of Cheongyecheon Euljiro. This was combination of manufacturing and distribution of substitute material and tools. And the repair, they have repair function. And this is a collective of skilled workers. And the other one is cooperation system. And that's why they're cheap and fast. And customized flexible production and city center location focus on domestic demands. So actually, that's why they even could produce mask, the machine for making mask. So in the beginning of COVID era, actually Cheongyecheon did some brilliant work to make like parts for mask making machines. So this is why domestic factories are important. And manufacturing plants and tool distribution business in Cheongyecheon and Euljiro are carrying out main virtues of first industrial revolution actually. So personalization and flexible manufacturing and regionalization. So they already naturally did it. So this is not old place, but this is naturally built innovational space. So this is the image of a cafe. So they are all linked, and actually there are some important actors for sure. And we found out that there is this MIT is an American MIT. So KIST and KAIST, that's the famous university in South Korea. So they are very important, the linkage to other shops actually. So we imagine visualize like this love map, and then we thought it would be great if we make more, nicer. And then that's why we invited Wonyoung to do more nicer job. And we not even just the visualizing, but we trying to connect the customers to and the workers here through agency. So this is the image of that, and I will just skip this part. So this is the presentation, and so Cheongyechoen Euljiro Alliance, we just started funding. So if you're interested, you can donate money, but only Koreans can do that. So actually, in Euljiro Bear is just next to the redevelopment site. Actually, they're gentrified by nearby like pub called Mansan. The Mansan pub is keep evicting the neighborhood, and we keep we keep fight against them, and we did a concert for them, and we still doing it, and we run regular tours. So if you'd like to join, you can join. And we did a virtual. We made a virtual concert. So if you come to Cheongyecheon, you can just watch their performances. And this is a reward for donators. And then we started another poster rally. So designers actually in 2009, over 200 designers submitted their posters to join us. So we're going to do it again this month. Yeah. Thank you. And then Wonyoung will talk about the details about the website.
Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. Yeah, as Eunseon mentioned, we'll just proceed directly to Wonyoung's presentation before we have Q&A session in the end.
Thanks, Eunseon, for great presentation. And I'll share my screen. Can you see?
Yes.
Yeah, so hi everyone. So it's such a great pleasure to present this visualization project. So my name is Wonyoung, and I'm currently doing my Ph.D. at the Department of Urban Studies and Planning at MIT, and I'm basically data visualization designer and researcher, spending actually most of my lifetime in Seoul, and I have been collaborating, listening to the city, and activist of the Cheongyecheon Anti-Gentrification Alliance for years. So today, what I'm going to talk about is the strategy of visualization in former archives. So it'll be mostly about what epistemological framework that I have been doing when I did this project, and then how I apply such concept to this project. So one thing I wanted to note before I jumped into the talk is this work would have not been possible without super brilliant and dedicated data collection work done by the activists, namely Eunseon, Gunchur, and Aram. So we started to plan to create this visualization in last fall, and I happen to know this Cheongyecheon Anti-Gentrification Alliance through the Listen to the Cities work. and I kept thinking about how to contribute to their advocacy. So I was so excited to finally collaborate with them, and I had a chance to explore the data set they have been collecting. And so, but the structure of the data set they gave and they present was mostly based on the informal relationship with the social and physical space in there. So here is the list of data set that activists have been collecting. So one interesting thing is that each data set structure, form, scale, and the format is all different. So for instance, we had a transaction data of businesses in Euljiro as a network data format. The Eunseon just showed that. And the documents from the informal organization and events like the attending the wedding. So basically the attending a wedding of colleagues' children is very important social activities generally in Korea. So it's really important that if one cannot attend, then they must ask their friend to attend the wedding to give their money gift. That's basically the norm. So therefore, the list of money gifts at a wedding is truly valuable proxy for seeing their social networks. So these kind of data set were mostly non-digitized. It's roughly tabular format data, but it's mostly non-digitized and accompanied by photographic evidence. So Gunchar had taken the lead of collecting such data set. And we also had the survey data of the artists who frequently used Euljiro for buying the materials, and we also have the data of the alleys in Euljiro, and I will show you what it is, captured by the 360-degree camera. And lastly, one of the activists, Aram, started to have conversation of owners of Dabang. So Dabang is basically it's very interesting place especially in Euljiro. So they are sort of coffee shop, but their physical form is different from today's coffee shop, and rather I would say that the Dabang culture came from the 70s and 80s, and then thus most customers were over 50s. So owners of Dabangs basically have very intimate relationship with the business owners in Euljiro, and Aram studied about the relationship. And the data format is also not something we can easily handle. Basically, it's a sort of oral histories of the owners. So we couldn't rely on the meaning of this kind of data set is that we couldn't rely on any complete data set that is, and then that was basically the starting point. So every data set provide partial understanding of something in there, and then we couldn't claim the completeness or the accuracy of such data set. So, but that is completely understandable though, because these are kind of informal data. So I started to think that how we can effectively use then such informal data. So the informal data can be understood as a non-systemized, non-cataloged. So it's very fragile and hard to be used for research, and it's very volatile, meaning that if we didn't carry it, it would just simply disappear. So, but I thought that we should not avoid such data for research and policy formulation. So then question is how we can overcome the limitation of this informal data. And that's something I primarily focused. So I started to find some literature and people who think about this issue, and I found researchers who suggested the notion of informal archives. So in that paper, you point out two potential impact of the informal archives. So the one is, although incomplete, the informal data has been collected by activists. And in terms of when they think about the volatility of the data, for instance, the document of the business can be just shredded when they move or clean their businesses. So these kind of informal data have its own value because of the survival of this hostile environment. And so informal data can tell a very unique stories about local histories that official archives or research mostly produced by the municipalities in a city level, they couldn't tell. So I thought that the informal data was rather very good data set in terms of visualizing the social capital of Euljiro and Cheongyecheon. So therefore, the main objective is to create counter narratives through informal data. And when you think about the main narrative is in Seoul is, as Eunseon mentioned throughout the lecture, is creating commodified urban space, and the development is always prioritized over social values and space and places. So the visualization focus what has been in there in various ways using multifaceted data that I just showed, and what will be destroyed if the main narrative is enacted. So I was hoping to this work will be emphasizing both physical and social aspect, which is usually invisible. So that's somehow challenging. So that was one of the main objectives of this project. So now I'm going to tell you the visualization strategies of create these visualizations. So you can actually check the URL socialcapital.cheongyecheon.com. The website is already there, so you can check the interactive version. But I'm going to tell you the visual strategy of how I create that. So the first strategy is to create relationships among data sets to create a relatively more structured data set. So we need to create a data structure that connects all of the data set into one context. So we have different types of data set. So to resolve this issue, I basically created Cheongyecheon Euljiro base map. The structure created the relationships with this data, so then we can easily add, edit, update of the list of businesses within in a spatial data format. So the process of the creating base map was more of iterative process. So for instance, this map shows the infrastructure data set, like the buildings and streets. So this kind of data set could get easily from the data portal in Korea. So the street data comes from OpenStreetMap, a crowdsourced spatial database that is very popular. And the building data comes from the National Spatial Data Infrastructure, NSDI, which is the official spatial data hub in Korea. Then I started to add up first informal data. So first data is LD data of Euljiro. So these LDs are the physically there, but the LDs are very valuable space for showing informal physical space, I would say. So the business owners of this area use LDs much more frequently because often it's the shortest path and not crowded and so on. So the data was originally identified by Google architects, an architecture firm in Seoul, and the rich visual data set was later collected by the fieldwork of the alliance. Then I think that these alleys are situated in the base map. Then we can think a lot of different stories can come up. So for instance, the relationship of the social capital can be visualized through these alleys. So then the list of businesses, including names, locations, addresses are on the map, but these are all incomplete. So rather, I would say it's very fragmented data set. So I plan to stitch them in an incremental manner, meaning that so we can pull data from the business transactions data from this table. So we can have the 5 different businesses. Then pull data from the artist visit pattern data. We ended up additionally having shop F, and the shop B and C have both business transactions and artist visit pattern data. And the informal organization and events data, we can additionally have the shop G as a result, and then we can have the shop A and B's information additionally. So the second strategy is about using imagination, which is often tapped in the data visualization. So I wanted to tell you this strategy by using 2 examples of this project. So the one is artist visit pattern data, and it includes the artwork, name of the artwork, and then subgenre of the artist, and the list of businesses they visited. And the other data is the story of Dabang owners and the story of the water bottle delivery every morning. So Dabang owners are colleagues, observers, and listeners of the Euljiro area, and they know when business owners order coffee and maintain very intimate relationships, like attending the children's or business owners' wedding is one good example. So, and in summer, every morning, Dabang owners deliver cold water bottles to regular customers, businesses, and Ara, one of the activists who studies this, carefully documented the trajectory and interviewed them. So these two examples both were emphasizing the location of businesses and the streets, including alleys. And I thought that it would be great to show the relationships of social capital using this physical trajectory. So it's very important to note that the Dabang owners and artists use these alleys. And alleys were, I would say, it's bridge infrastructure that visualizes social capital. And but the city of Seoul did not think that alleys were official streets, so no addresses were assigned. But it's very important to note that the Dabang owners, artists, and business owners use these alleys. So again, alleys were bridge infrastructure that visualizes social capital, and this is the 360-degree camera that the activists of the alliance collected in the area. And I was thinking Dabang owners and artists and business owners use this street, especially alleys, and which is very informal infrastructure, but it's definitely working. So I thought that this process would be working to show social capital. So for instance, this is the visualization of the trajectory of an artist. So this artist number 9 hop off from Jongno Samga station here and then visit 4 businesses to consult their artwork. So depending on the list of the businesses, artists often use alleys. So I wanted to show this process through the map quite naturally. These trajectories are actually generated, meaning that it's not a true trajectory. Yeah. Okay. I feel a little lost, but here, yeah. This shows all of the artists' trajectory. So I'm a little bit worried that Zoom won't clearly render this video, but you can always go to the website and see the things. And this is the visualization of the path of Dabang owners, delivery path of the Dabang owners. But still, this path is also relied on the imagination because we basically reconstructed this through the conversation with Dabang owners and the photos. So this imaginatory visualization, I would say, is not 100% correct, but not a complete hoax. So I wanted to argue here that these attempts are pretty much valid for complementing the limitation of informal data. So it is also related to the knowledge production discourses. So thinking about what is valid knowledge and who decide that. Practically, data is always a product of reducing reality. So the data visualization designers and researchers always keep in mind that fact and always estimating this process to effectively show something. So I wanted to say that these work on these tensions. And the last point is about creating a visualization that is between an archive and story. So the meaning that so I wanted to introduce this concept of martini glass. Martini glass structure is named because the story of structure is similar with the Martini glass is with the 90-degree rotated. So that we can see this picture that the y-axis means that the amount of information that is interactively navigatable. So all of the subsection of the website, the industrial ecosystem and social capital and Dabang story, all of them has linear narratives through storytelling. Then when the story ends and it turned on the interactive capabilities and readers can actually explore more information. So when people want to suddenly explore in the middle of the linear narratives, then people can turn off the linear narratives and turn on the interactive non-linear maps to actually interact with more. So for instance, the first part of the industry network maps, you actually cannot manipulate the map itself, but you need to actually follow the linear narratives by scrolling the website. But when you turn on this map exploration button, the whole website interaction is changed to manipulate maps, like the zoom in, out, and clicking the businesses so you can explore more on the maps element. In this case, it's the businesses networks. So likewise, the social capital part. So before you turn on this button, the linear narratives dominate the story. But then when the map exploration is turned on, then the map and the drop-down menu will lead more interactive exploration and to see this content in an interactive manner. And artist visitation pattern is also too. So following the linear narrative, and then when you suddenly want to explore more, then you can turn on this button to actually explore the path in this case. Yeah, this is the one of the zoom in visualization. Yeah, so that's it for my talk, and then all the content is basically available on the website. And thank you very much. I look forward to having more questions and discussion.
Yeah, thanks for this really amazing presentations. I personally had so many questions, but I think as we are a little bit running out of time, I want to go ahead and open the floor for questions. I see some questions in the chat, but I can also go over with that, but I would encourage all of you to raise your hand and unmute yourself to ask your question.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you can raise your hand. And David Hong, and he asked,
I could restate my question. Essentially, just wanted to understand. So if these buildings are probably getting upzoned and housing units are likely increasing, I mean that's just an assumption. It may be wrong, but does this mean that like it's less dense as we're going, or that increasingly more people are owning multiple units within those dispossessed areas, or that we're shifting from ownership models to increasingly rent, which is also common in other metropolitan areas? So what kind of, I guess, phenomena are you observing with redevelopment and loss of ownership? Like what are you seeing driving, what causes are you seeing driving that? Thanks.
Actually, in South Korea, I cannot really compare to other metropolitan because I don't know very well about other cities in other country, and the context and the law is so different. So I think it's kind of almost impossible to compare Seoul to other metropolitan. I think that's a little difficult. But in South Korean case, the people already own one house, they purchased another house called, in Newtown, because they could lend money from the bank because they already have a house. So in Korean banks, if you have a house, they lend you more money than compared to who does not have money. So actually gap is getting wider because of that. So the market system and the registrations they're pretty much weird, and that's why the owner of a house is getting, owners are decreasing. Yeah.
So you're essentially attributing more home ownership by fewer number of people, so multiple unit ownership, as opposed to any mode shift in terms of going from ownership to rent models. It's like you're primarily in these cases of dispossession or redevelopment, 제개발, you're saying that that's the primary driver.
Actually, in South Korea, I'm not really sure about the land system here, because in Korea, it's not like Hong Kong. I heard that Hong Kong is they buy house and rent them out. In South Korea as well, but Korean people buy house as an asset, and they want to sell it later with better price. So of course, meanwhile they rent out, but we have very unique concept called 전세. So which is the deposit is really huge, and then you don't pay any rent meanwhile. So that's really common. So this is not really like other countries, I think.
I think that the mode of the 전세 is really unique in South Korea, and that is the reason that is really hard to compare with other cities, like the huge deposit and then don't pay any rent, and then it's basically in between the renters and the homeowners, and we actually also care about the number of people who are in 전세. So that's I think the most different from the other cities.
So I'm sorry that I cannot really clearly explain this weird system, because I used to live in UK for a while, for 4 years, but the rent is really high there. But I'd never seen like a 전세 concept that the deposit is really huge, like over $1 million, and there's no monthly payment. So this is quite unique.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I see the hand raised by Louisa, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. So yeah, please feel free to unmute yourself.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Eunseon and Wonyoung. That was incredible and some information I've been waiting for a very long time to hear. So I'm based in Seoul and actually research a lot about urban development, and especially in industrial ecosystems. I was surprised but not shocked to hear that your collective had to push the government to provide relocation space or options to the workshop owners. If you could, I would like you to explain a little bit more about this process, because I know a complication is that the workshop owners do not live in the area, therefore they don't have as much sway in local politics. And I know that the relocation compensation must be a little bit different for them. So are all workshop owners in these areas offered relocation space as compensation, or is it something that they individually have to push for?
Of course, there is no alternate. They don't give you any alternative space to work. That's why Cheongyechoen Euljiro Alliance have been fighting. And actually in South Korea, for residential purpose of building, like residential purpose redevelopment, for housing redevelopment, I think over 50 people killed during the eviction. So just for social housing, like very small housing. So the renters, the tenants, they wanted to relocate to the original space. They've been fighting for a long time, and finally we have the private companies or government companies. They must offer the tenants kind of alternative house for them. But for merchants, for mechanics, they never really did it before. So this is the first time that we achieved that. So we are very proud of that. And it was very hard for sure. And because it also is a politically last former suicide, the mayor was more interested in that. So it was a little easier, but we did so many rallies and protests, and we wrote something about it, and we did so many cultural events. And then we, luckily we were able to gain some attention from the media, so we could do that actually. So, and then we're still doing that. We gained only 20% of whole the merchants. So this is not enough. Yeah, thank you. And then Taesu. Hi Taesu, how are you? Please turn your camera.
Hi.
As you know, city government doesn't think that much. And they don't really care about others' life much because they care about their career, as you know. So they just like if someone is gathering together, and if young people gather together, they believe that that is good one. And actually, Euljiro gained the nickname called Hipjiro because of hip. And because there are so many cool restaurants, old restaurants, and workers, the unique atmosphere there, because the alley is so old. Because in South Korea everything is new. It's just already, if a building older than 10 years, we think that is very old. So in South Korea, is alley from 17th and 60s seems really, really old, and young people really think that authentic. So people love that space. But anyway, most of Euljiro that we think, that I think half of them will be blown out anyway. So they use the Euljiro as Hipjiro. They pretend that urban regeneration succeed. Actually, there's no responsibility after that. They used as a Euljiro as kind of hipster, downtown, and now they just abandoned it. And that's why so many restaurants are threatened by redevelopment at the moment. So some of very famous Wonyoung, a very famous pancake place, Korean pancake place, is just closed. And so many shops are closing at the moment. And those little restaurants actually led Hipjiro, and then they are just kicked out now. So this is quite sad. And there is no alternative plans for them. So we just started kind of campaign for restaurant owners at the moment. Thank you.
I know it's already 8 p.m. In Boston, but we can cover one or two more questions if there's any from the group. Okay, then if there is no more questions, I guess it's time to wrap up today's discussion. Yeah, thanks again for sharing your work and insight, both of you, and we look forward to continuing this discussion and potentially collaborating in any way on this critical issues we've discussed today. I know only just an hour was just so short to cover all your work and insights you can deliver. So, but yeah, we will definitely have another opportunity. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining us this evening, and please be connected with us via Instagram for further updates and events. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
So much.
everyone. Thank you.